I would like to begin our day by inviting Cristina Odone, CEO of Fair Hearing and founder of the Parenting Circle charity, who sits on the government's cross-department family policy advisory group and whose career spans 20 years in journalism and think tanks, including being the editor of the Catholic Herald and deputy editor of the New Statesman, to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Huda. Good morning. I'd like to begin now by inviting you to join me in prayer. Blessed is he who shepherds the weak. I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon you. Don't be alarmed. Oop, can you hear me now? Don't be alarmed. That was not a real prayer from the book of Ezekiel, but the gospel according to Quentin Tarantino, adapted at a White House prayer session by Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary. You don't need to be a Christian to see the blasphemy in a politician who's bastardizing a sacred verse for his destructive purposes. But you do need to be aware of the consequences, because this is happening across the pond, but it may happen here too. Because if the hard right continues to gain influence over our politics, it will become integral to British culture. And the worst is, we may be guilty of facilitating the takeover by fundamentalists if we are not conversant in the language of faith. As the CEO of Fair Hearing, a small new charity working to help domestic abuse victims going through the family courts, we started our introduction to the sector only in December 2024. But already we have found that there's scant understanding of spiritual ideals, and there's limited capacity to discern between religious teachings and cultural currents. This is dangerous, not only for the vulnerable women whom the sector strikes to help, but I would argue for every one of us. It's a brilliant and virtuous social justice sector. It is a system, however, so secular that it won't be able to cope with the avalanche of fundamentalist faith that is coming this way. If you can't tell your Ezekiel from your Tarantino, your gospel according to Luke from your gospel according to Pete, you cannot counter the claims of perpetrators who manipulate faith to control or abuse their victims. Steeped in an ideology that has placed a blanket ban on faith as misogynist, the domestic abuse and VAWG sector risks failing those victims whose abusers misuse faith to subjugate them. Yet we know that a victim of abuse is vulnerable, traumatized, fearful, feeling so overwhelmed that she's easy prey for a narcissist in sheep's clothing, especially one who bleats convincingly from the sacred texts. Our charity has been working with over 200 domestic abuse victims, and many blame themselves for not meeting imposed religious standards. They think they are the guilty party. They are the sinners. Their abuser must be right because he invokes a higher power. We can't help them unless we can say, wait, this is the perpetrator's self-serving interpretation of faith. This is ideology masquerading as belief, and it is being used to spread a political agenda. Because for a section of society who feel powerless and disenfranchised, the only hope lies in looking beyond the here and now and mobilizing God as their guide. God as the champion of their cause, God as their generalissimo. When politics and faith are enmeshed, they can prove combustible. Think of the Puritans in this country, the Taliban in Afghanistan, or Iran's Ayatollahs. These groups weaponize faith in many ways, in othering anyone with different beliefs, in demonizing anyone who criticized them, and by relegating women to the lowest rung in the human hierarchy. In America, over the past few decades, religious elements have become deeply intertwined with political activism. Some Christian evangelicals, like Pete Heske, and some ultra-conservative Catholics, like J.D. Vance, have led a movement that seeks a review of reproductive rights, gender roles, and LGBTQ plus equality. Well-funded, highly organized, and explicitly committed to influencing policy, the groups that sit under this umbrella movement have already overturned Roe versus Wade in 2022. They've driven nonprofits like Focus on the Family and the Family Research Council to lobby for stricter abortion laws. And they have promoted male headship. Men should lead while women take supportive roles. Once a woman is relegated to second place, her voice is likely to be ignored. In any situation where it's his word against hers, his needs versus hers, his claims or hers, the woman comes off worse. This has profound consequences in the area fair hearing is working in, which is the courtroom. A domestic abuse victim or the victim of a rape should feel confident that she has access to justice. But when she's a second-class citizen, she will be discouraged from reporting abuse by a man. And worse, if she does, his testimony will carry weight. Hers will be brushed aside. In the he said, she said competition, he wins hands down. This is why our charity is training judges, mediators, and police to better handle domestic abuse cases. But we worry. We worry beyond the family justice system because we know that UK-based political organizations are receiving support from American Christian groups. We have seen the demonstrators carrying crosses and the protests that begin with a prayer but end in a riot. This influx of foreign money and influence can fuel national campaigns about everything from abortion to sex education. It can shape the services charities provide, the information they distribute, and the policies they advocate for. When ideological agendas influence services, there's a risk that care becomes conditional. We only serve those who share our beliefs. Of course, despite the saying that when America sneezes, Britain catches a cold, we're not destined to copycat everything that happens across the pond. We have our own legal framework, we have a multicultural society and strong traditions in the charity sectors. The John Major family values moral crusade ended in shambles after all. But we are not immune to some infections. The manosphere has shown how popular a woman-hating movement can be. A political candidate can publicly approve a tweet sharing a disgusting sexual fantasy about Carol Vorderman without being dropped. Easy access to violent pornography has addicted men of all ages to horrific practices, including the rape of unconscious women and including the recording of the rape of their own wives by multiple strangers. This is happening in the United Kingdom, not the United States. So what should we do? First, understand the faithful. To call out Robbie Robinson's supporters in the use of the Christian cross, or to expose Reform's acceptance of sexism, we need to know that this is not the Christian message. which is that every human being is equal because made in God's image. We need to acknowledge that religion can be a force for good. There are hundreds, thousands of faith-based foundations that give generously to the most marginalized and overlooked. Think of Barnardo's, Quorum, the Salvation Army. They were steeped in Christian foundations. Religious charities for millennia have helped the poor and the vulnerable, no matter what their denomination. As a practicing Catholic, I can say that faith has proved my rock when I encounter challenges, and its spiritual rituals remain a rich resource for me to draw on. Catholic social teaching motivates my work. It is also, by the way, supposed to be what fuels Andy Burnham, possibly our next Prime Minister. The teaching is rooted in a belief in service to others, in fair access to justice, and the spark of the divine within us, regardless of ability, status, race. We need to extend support to women of faith. In mentoring our victims, we have heard that despite the great work done by Muslim Women's Network, by Jewish Women's Aid, Sikh Women's Aid, and other groups and charities, we have learned that this bit of the sector has very limited resources, and that for many victims, access is a postcode lottery. Yet outreach into these faith communities is crucial. When violence against women and girls happens in these insulated and marginalized communities, it is too often accepted as a woman's lot. And a woman who blows the whistle risks being punished through being ostracized or worse. We have been conscious for some years now of the need for by and for support. We know that these are the services that victims from a particular minoritized group seek aid from. But just as race or ethnicity is core to some victims' identity, so too their faith can be core to others. They will need the support of women who respect religious beliefs. They may need steering to distinguish between religious teachings and cultural currents. And although that may not be your role, you will lose their trust if you dismiss faith wholesale, or trash their long-held beliefs, or underestimate the hold that their spiritual religious life has upon these women. Finally, we need to ensure transparency in the charitable sector. Organizations working with vulnerable groups should be open about their affiliations and funding sources. Women who seek support for domestic abuse or any type of VAWG depend on us for accurate, non-judgmental assistance. No charity should fuel misinterpretations around sexuality, purity, or worth. Let's go back to Pete Hesketh's prayer. His falsified text exposes a real political current that right now boasts millions of adherents. I want to raise the alarm lest this current sweep away all our efforts to protect vulnerable women. Let's not be passive bystanders, but let's challenge actively the warped messaging that can come out of the church, the chapel, or the White House. For this, you need to know that the true Christian message is that all human beings are made in God's image. You don't need to start your meeting with a prayer. You don't need to convert to any faith, but you do need to beware. Faith may be playing an ever bigger role in Britain. Thank you.